We talk at length about the dominance of Max Verstappen and what he's been able to do in such a short time in his early career. Can you guys characterize what we're seeing from him now that he is fifth, I believe, tied for fifth or fourth at this point on all-time win list?
He's tied for fifth now with Ayrton Senna. Next up is Alan Prost, who's on 51 victories. Max is now on 41. So he's right up there with the greatest names in the sport, and rightly so. I mean, I don't think it was really in doubt. It's funny how these things only kind of come into people talking about it when they hit certain milestones of races, but Max is no better a driver after Sunday's race than he was before. It's just that he's all of a sudden got himself into this top five. But I think for some time we've known that he is one of the greatest drivers ever to race in F1. It was kind of obvious when he was younger that he was going to be something pretty special. But ever since he won the championship in 21, then doubled down last year, and then just is now accelerating forward, it's clear that he is that good. He had that battle with Lewis Hamilton in 2021 for the championship, proved just how good he is and how fierce a competitor he is. And so really, I don't think it's any surprise that we're talking about him as one of the top drivers. And also, realistically, at the age of 25, he could comfortably go over 103 victories, which is Lewis Hamilton's record at the moment. Of course, Hamilton is still competing, so may win more races if Mercedes get it together. So that number could still go up. I wouldn't like to bet which one would finish their career with the most victories, but he's going to be in that area. I think he's going to be in three figures by the time he retires. He's that good. He's on that trajectory, and it's no surprise at all for me to hear that he's been talked about as one of the greats.
What was the reaction on the ground afterwards from Red Bull?
Yeah, I think the thing with Red Bull is and Christian Horner, when you speak to him, is I think they're just continually blown away by him, by just the level that he keeps setting. I think actually the race was super impressive, but I think they were actually just more blown away by, in all the chaos of Saturday, the rain, the changing conditions, Max was still comfortably on pole. He got through, and there was never really a moment when you thought Max isn't going to make it through. And Christian just said he's just got such a handling of those situations that at no point do they ever feel like he's on the cusp of really dropping out of them. Obviously, that's a big contrast to what we saw with Perez and we've seen with other drivers. So I think Red Bull, and one thing that keeps amazing them when, and we've spoken to friends of ours at Red Bull, I think they're amazed by what Max does on track, but I think they're just as amazed by the fact that he has some of these performances and he's so calm before and after. There was a story, I think, after that incredible pole position in Monaco, one of the people who works very closely with Max said he, about 10 minutes after doing the media sessions there, rather than the adrenaline flowing, he was just watching some gaming YouTube, on his iPad, just chilling out at the back. And I think they find it surprising that he seems in his head to be quite removed from the awe that everyone else has for him. I don't think, he seems to show it in the same way. So, and that probably explains why he is so calm out in front. All these things happen. I know sometimes on the radio, he can, like any great driver, he can get angry with his team, but he just seems so calm and relaxed. And especially right now, that seems to be getting better and better. So I think Red Bull, if you were to ask them, is this as good as Max can get? I think most people would say no. I think he can just keep getting better because, as Lawrence said, the trajectory is just so good with him, and it's like a hockey stick. It's never eased off. It's just been getting better and better. So, yeah, I think they're blown away by him, and I think it's always telling. We saw the same with Lewis Hamilton. I think, when he was dominating, you would talk to people at Mercedes, and they were just like, we don't know how he's doing it. Obviously the car's great, but you need the driver in the car to deliver, and Max is just going above and beyond to do that every week.
I think that calmness can sometimes come across as nonchalantness, which is certainly a good thing. That means obviously he's at the highest of the highs right now. And as you guys have both mentioned, he's only going to continue to progress. Would you say, Lawrence, that calmness and maybe nonchalantness is impressive, or does it lead you for cause for concern that his heart isn't going to be in this sport for a long period of time?
I'm not sure about that, because all that Max has known and been a part of throughout his entire life, from the age of being essentially 3 or 4 years old, is racing. And so I think if you remove that from his life, it would be quite a shock to him. I think he would be missing something quite big. And we've seen this a number of times with drivers when they're in the mid-20s, and certainly if they're being successful and they're asked about, well, how long will you continue to drive? And they're always a bit reluctant to say that I'll still be there in 30 when they're in their 30s, because the idea of what's going to happen in 10 years time when you're 25 seems a huge amount of a distance away. And it seems like it's, it's hard to believe that you'll still be doing the same thing. But the reality is, once they get there, and if they're still enjoying it, and if it's still a big part of their life, then they will continue. And I mean, Max has kind of suggested that he doesn't like some of the ways the sport is going. He really doesn't like sprint races, for example. So he's often used that as, well, if they continue to add sprint races and if they continue to add rounds to the championship, I'm going to walk away. But how serious is he about that? I don't know. I mean, he's got a contract through to 2028 anyway. But the sport could look quite different even in that span. But realistically, I think he'd have to have something to fill it with. So yeah, he wants to go and race at Le Mans. That's quite clear. I actually think he probably could do that whilst racing in F1. A number of the drivers were asked about that in Canada after the Le Mans 24 hours recently, and a lot of them said that the calendar is too packed and they can't find a way to do it. But I think with Max, especially if he's dominant as he is right now, it is probably possible that he finds a way to kind of loop it in. But even then, that's something that you can do when you're in your 40s, and there's lots of much older drivers racing at Le Mans. It's quite a different discipline. So I can't see a situation where he gets truly bored of F1, because I think it's such a big part of his life that he will miss it greatly if he does. So even if he does, he may do a Schumacher or an Alonso where they take 2 years out, kind of mid-career, and then come back. I could see maybe him doing that, but even that, at the moment, I think is pretty unlikely. He loves racing, he really does. And if he sounds a little bit bored on the radio, that's probably just because he's having it a bit easy at the moment. As soon as it becomes competitive, you hear a very different Max on the radio, sometimes a very frustrated Max, and that shows you how much he wants it.
Well, going for the fastest lap a couple weekends ago in Spain, that shows you just how competitive he is, how much I think he does care about every single point in the Drivers' Championship and ultimately the Constructors' Championship. So the competitive nature is certainly there. I wonder at what point, when you're winning, and it's coming so easily, do you get bored, as you mentioned? But certainly we hope somebody will be able to push Red Bull in the near future, the coming future.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content plus live streaming, make sure to subscribe to ESPN Player.